Judith Leblein, and welcome to Conversations. You know it. You've heard it for 30 years. Live from New York, it's Saturday night. A generation of people have grown up with it. To get behind the scenes, we're going to talk with Jeff Weingrad. Jeff has written the book Saturday Night, A Backstage History of Saturday Night Live. Jeff, thanks so much for joining us. I think just about everyone, at least in our age group, can say there were days they loved Saturday Night Live and there were days they hated Saturday Night Live, and now their kids are saying they love Saturday Night Live, they hate Saturday Night Live. When did it all start? Where did it all start?
Well, the first show was October 11th of 1975, but it actually got rolling in the previous couple of years before that. It all began with a man by the name of Lorne Michaels.
Still involved?
Still involved after having left after a few years, but came back and has been there forever now. But the show came about not just because of one person. No success has just generally one originator, one creator, and Lorne was the creative boss and producer of Saturday Night Live, but there were a lot of other people who were involved there. The show came about because somebody by the name of Johnny Carson went to the president of NBC, a man by the name of Herb Schlosser, in 1974, and told Herb Schlosser that he didn't like the fact that NBC was rerunning The Tonight Show on Saturday night at 11:30. He thought it was watering down the impact of the show that would play during the week. So he asked Herb to get it out of there somehow. And Herb Schlosser actually came up with this idea. He felt that it was time to put on a show for the younger generation of viewers, that there really hadn't been very much on television that appealed directly to the younger viewers, and he was going to put it on. He was also driven by the fact that he looked around and he wanted to make an impact with his career and on television, and he looked at NBC and they had the Today Show, which was a franchise even in the 1970s. It was on for 20-something years at that time, and he saw the Tonight Show, which had been on for 20 years in 1974, and he wanted to create something that maybe had the potential to be a franchise, and he put out a memo to his bosses, let's do a show 11:30 Saturday nights and see what happens. And 30 years later, I think it became a franchise.
Now wait a minute. Somebody had to say to him, sitting around a big table somewhere in the city, what are you, nuts? On Saturday night, nobody watches TV.
Without a doubt, people said that to him. And as a matter of fact, the people who said it to him the most were his executives at NBC. There were people in the various departments at NBC, the heads of various departments, who told him that people do not watch television on Saturday nights, that the audience isn't there that we're looking for, that the viewership is down, and why are we going to spend all this startup money and probably just fail. He believed in it, and Lorne Michaels, once Schlosser hired a young producer by the name of Dick Ebersol, who has gone on to become the chairman of NBC Sports now, and in fact recently was in an accident that made the news, and a very sad thing. But Dick went out and had the smarts to hire somebody really creative to do the show, and he found Lorne out in Los Angeles. Lorne was is a Canadian and by birth, and he had come down to America to try to make his impact on American television. He had worked on some shows. He really wasn't. He was a bit frustrated at the time because he wasn't making the impact that he wanted, but he had worked briefly on Laugh-In, which was a show that had a certain reputation back then. It was a very, very funny show.
Slow start. You know, Laugh-In, people were critical, but boy, classic.
Right. Well, it is. But you know, a lot of people look at Laugh-In and they try to paint it with a similar paint as Saturday Night Live, and that it's counterculture and that. And really, it wasn't. It was really the first show. Laugh-In really was the first show to take advantage of what was then a very new medium of videotape, and with the editing of it and doing all those quick cuts. So they really took advantage of that. The fact of the matter was, in terms of its politics, the show's politics, its producer had been a speechwriter for Richard Nixon, in fact. So its politics really really, while it did make jokes about things, it really wasn't trying to break any new ground.
Now,
the Smothers Brothers, now they were breaking ground.
You know, I saw them not too long ago, and they still are sharp as tacks and really funny.
Yeah.
But I find a little bit of irony in Johnny Carson's somewhat involvement with Saturday Night Live, because Carson was the place every stand-up wanted the chance to be on. And Carson loved comedians. He was one of the best. And it's so interesting to me.
Well, Carson was, in a sense, the generation of humor and comedians that Saturday Night Live immediately started to make fun of.
Yes.
You know, I co-authored this book with my partner Doug Hill, and I really want to stress that the two of us did this because we sweated a lot in doing this book. And Doug and I, in researching this, it was very clear that Carson was somebody that this group, when they first started, he was a perfect example of the type of comedian that many of them had disdain for, just because he was mainstream. Lorne Michaels, though, in fact, had a high regard for Carson. But you know, a lot of the people he hired were these counterculture rebels, and they would have nothing of a mainstream personality. So yes, it was interesting, and Carson didn't really care for this group very much. He immediately
Well, they were irreverent.
Well, not only were they irreverent and making fun of him.
Yeah.
So I mean, they had some sketches in which they
There
used it
was
as a
no
joke.
one that escaped,
No,
including one of my favorites were parodies on Frank Sinatra, which we'll talk about, a New Jersey
Joe Piscopo.
native, Joe Piscopo. But the concept of doing sketch comedy live and at the moment in real time was really groundbreaking.
Yes and no. I mean, it really wasn't, because you could go back 25 years before that with your show of shows.
True.
And they were doing live comedy. Jackie
With as
Gleason
many
was doing
set
live
changes
comedy.
as well?
Well, there were a lot of set changes. What really sort of was groundbreaking about Saturday Night Live in terms of television was that it brought to television a completely different sensibility. The sensibility that Sid Caesar and Carl Reiner, they were doing a show that was very much in vogue in terms of its humor.
Right. And for its time.
And for its time, they were doing Borscht Belt comedy on television, and it had an audience that loved that kind of thing. The Saturday Night Live people, they put on a show that they felt was for their generation, that they themselves would want to watch. Very counterculture, very anti-establishment, and in fact, very 60-ish, if you will, in terms of that sort of thing. And the 60s, the people who grew up in the 60s had not yet gotten access to mainstream television. There were some things on TV that had the ring of counterculture, like the Smothers Brothers, of course, were fired for their efforts.
And it was before Comedy Central, a place where that generation could seek out their comics.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, this group did not have this sensibility, and this age group that brought it to television had not been on TV before, and Saturday Night Live gave this group an opportunity, and they really obviously went very far with it. So
now the format of the show I find very interesting. The fact that they were writing and writing. In fact, I just saw an interview with Bill Murray, who said they were champion procrastinators because they were so busy playing around and procrastinating and living whatever lives some of them were, that they needed script by Wednesday, and Tuesday night they sometimes stayed overnight and finally banged it out. I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall listening to those triages of comedy.
It was a crazy time. They didn't sometimes stay overnight on Tuesdays. They stayed overnight every Tuesday night. And they all just were trying to write scripts and come up with sketches. And yeah, it was like crazy middle of the night humor. And which again is almost very much comes out of the prodding and the sensibility of Lorne Michaels. He always was one who had a late night sensibility even before he had anything to do with Saturday Night Live. And interviewing him for the book, that was very clear. He felt it's closer to your subconscious.
I also always felt it was very similar to what my friends and I did. With or without a couple of beers. You know, the sort of chain of thinking humor, the chain of thought, to me it always felt like a bunch of guys and gals with funny sensibilities sitting around a table going, wouldn't it be funny if we put cones on our heads? And well, those are like the French people. And before you know it, you got yourself a legacy.
Yeah, it was an absurd sensibility that hadn't gotten on television before, and
And I think had the marijuana influence in many nights.
well, it did. It did. The group that was there the first 5 years, there's no doubt about it that marijuana smoke was heavy in the air the entire time they were there. Not so much that on a Saturday night at 11 o'clock they all sat around and smoked a joint, but through the week, you know, they did what millions of their peers did through the week, so yeah, the smoke was heavy in the air, and actually NBC was very new to NBC at the time because NBC had been a very buttoned-down corporation, and they didn't know what to do with it because, not to jump ahead of the story, but eventually through the years, the drug situation got a bit out of hand because it really changed from marijuana to cocaine, and it hurt some people personally. It took the heart out of the show, and NBC was totally lost as to what they should do in terms of whether, you know, how to deal with it.
Yeah, it was almost like two NBC buildings.
Well, it was.
You know, by day, one building, the Today Show,
Absolutely.
and that whole generation, and then upstairs.
There were actually fistfights. When this show began in the summer of 1975, and they hired this group of 15 writers and 8 cast members and all these other people who were involved in the production of the show, these people were given identification cards that they supposedly had to show every time they'd go to the elevator bank at 30 Rockefeller Plaza. There were fistfights over this because they're not going to do that. This is not a group of people who go along with the rules, and there were actually fistfights over it. So
did Lorne Michaels handpick his crew?
He pretty much did. That first year, he pretty much did. He came to New York, and when looking not just in New York, but in other places, other areas, cities and rural areas as well, in comedy clubs, improv clubs,
the whole
humor
Second
magazines.
City bunch.
Yeah, Second City and National Lampoon, who had combined to do some radio albums, and he was plucking people out of these sorts of groups. He got Jane Curtin from the Proposition in Boston. He got Bill Murray from Second City. He got Belushi from Second City. He got Aykroyd from Second City up in Toronto, where he also got Gilda, although he knew Gilda.
And some of them so young.
Oh, amazingly young.
You know, the comedy world, at least until Saturday Night Live, was you did the Borscht Belt, as you mentioned. You spent 20 years doing clubs for $5 a night, you know, and then maybe you made it. Some of these kids, Eddie Murphy, 16, 17?
Well, Eddie Murphy was 19 when he was hired, but which at that time was just mind-boggling that he was so young. But with that group, I mean, even in the first group, Lorraine Newman was 22. Franken and Davis, who were writers and performers on the show, Al Franken.
I laugh when you just say it. Who would have known Al Franken?
Well, he's a great. I like Al.
I just heard him speak recently. He's right on, boy.
I like
Funny.
Al a lot, as a matter of fact. They were 22. Alan Zweibel, who is now, he's done a lot of things in terms of writing movies and shows and things. He is now the co-writer, in a sense, with Billy Crystal for Billy Crystal's Broadway production, the one-person show that Billy Crystal's doing now. And Alan was a writer for the original show, and he was the one who came up with, although somebody else came up with the concept, but he wrote the first several samurai warrior sketches that John Belushi did. They all brought a youthful sensibility and a we can do anything we want sensibility.
Did they have any sense that some of these skits would be in the Smithsonian? I mean, at the time, did they know what they were doing, or did they just go for it?
I don't think that they had any thought that this was going to end up classic television. I think, in fact, I think they almost kept in mind they'd rather think about it that this was going to be anything but classic television, because, as I said, they felt classic TV was mainstream. They used to, and it's so unfair because we're talking about 22 and 23-year-old kids making these snap decisions, but they used to, when they wanted to dismiss somebody in terms of their sensibility or their humor, they might say something like, "No good, that's TV," or they might say, "No good, that's Carol Burnett." Oh, Carol Burnett is just a comedian for the the ages, but that's how they looked at it. They wanted something different than what had been on.
Well, they sure did it. If you're just joining us, the topic is Saturday Night Live, 30 years. Doug Hill and Jeff Weingrad, and Jeff is with us today. Interesting look at this phenomena. It's just amazing. And I'm thinking in conversation with you now, how this show affected TV comedy from the moment it started till now. I mean, when you think about the language in America, and I'm not going to say it's just Saturday Night Live's fault, but I mean, they push the bleep button every Saturday night. And some of those words at that time were unspeakable are now used on a sitcom at 7:30.
That's exactly how I describe it. That's exactly right. They push the envelope every week, and again, much of the credit, as with so many things with Saturday Night Live, has to go to Lorne Michaels, because he would argue all week long, all Saturday long, up to Saturday night about things that he felt he wanted to make sure he could say or do. It wasn't just saying, it was sometimes doing things on air.
So he went to the wall for his people?
Oh, all the time. And he became just masterful at working the network game, and he brought to the show.
Was he loved? Was he hated for that?
By
was he
whom?
loved by the cast?
You know, it's like
kind of bittersweet, huh?
It's not so much that he's disliked by the cast, because he's not, but Lorne is the godfather of the show, without a doubt. And so everybody who's hired and everybody who works there, everybody looks at him as if there's, that Lorne's every breath has meaning.
Right.
And so it's hard to say that that they like him, but I think most everybody respects him, and he's a funny guy and he's a nice guy. I have nothing but respect for him.
Boss, mentor, colleague, because of their ages too, being so close. By the way, the guy never ages. He's like Dick Clark. I mean, he never looks any older to me.
I know.
Now we have to talk about some of the greats and the lineup from the show, and some of them constantly reinventing themselves. Now, and sadness.
Oh yeah.
John Belushi, I mean, comic genius, dead, young.
Right.
Abusive. Chris Farley grew up crazy for John Belushi, met the same demise.
Right.
My favorite, Rosanna Dana.
Yeah.
Oh my God, what a story behind her.
That was Alan Dwight Bell too, who wrote those with
really?
Gilda. Yeah.
And Gilda, who would have known Gilda's House? One of the most remarkable love stories that I've ever read in Gilda's story, and left a legacy in an area, even outside of comedy.
Yeah.
So many stories from Saturday Night Live.
You could go on for hours about him. I mean, you can just pick a name and you pick Gilda. Lorne knew Gilda way back when. He brought it to New York immediately, and by the fourth year of this show, she was America's sweetheart. She was the Lucille Ball. She was the modern day, going back to the late 70s, the modern day Lucille Ball. NBC wanted her to take her own show. They kept trying to sort of spin her out on her own, but she actually was so loyal to Lorne and appreciative that she stayed with Saturday Night Live. But
and marries Gene Wilder, a fabulous love story, another great comic.
Right, but it's like I don't want to throw cold water on this, but nothing is as it seems in many cases. Often is the case, and Gilda is a good example of. The fact that everybody, especially in that early group, because lessons were learned as time went by, but especially in that early group, there were a lot of problems that were created as the show went on its first several years, because it came out of the block and it didn't get the overall ratings right away. It wasn't by TV standards an immediate hit, but by viewer standards, it was, in the sense that immediately the younger generation of viewers, they were staying home to watch that show.
I will tell you that you didn't go out, and this hit right in my college years and just post-college years. You didn't go to a club until you finished watching Saturday Night Live, and then you went out.
That's right.
And then I remember sort of it spread out to Saturday, where people cruised the Love Boat at 10 o'clock or at 9 o'clock because they were waiting for Saturday Night Live. Am I right?
Right.
Saturday night became a night again.
They were concerned that the people would go out and not watch it. What happened was it actually created a television audience that hadn't been there before.
People plan parties around it.
Absolutely. What I was going to say, though, is that in those first 5 years, these people became as famous, as instantly famous, as any celebrities have ever become. And in a way, they were very much the Beatles of America. This was not just a show that TV viewers kind of were turned on to. This was a show that had an impact on pop culture.
Oh, sure.
I mean, when you can say, to this day, you can say something, and if you get caught where it's the wrong thing, what do you say? Never mind.
Never mind.
But you say it like
Cheeseburger. I thought
like
of that the other day.
Yeah. I mean, things that go back 30 years. And so this was a show that had an impact on culture, and these people became so red hot. And the book, really, when Doug and I were doing our research, we realized, and it became, in a sense, the essence in terms of the theme of the book, is that the price of fame. That is not to excuse boorish and bad behavior, and there was plenty of it, but it's to try to understand that it's a condition that most of us never have, and when those who do, they have to learn how to deal with it. And everybody had problems. Gilda sadly had an eating disorder.
Terrible.
Bill Murray had excesses of ego. There were drug problems. Garrett Morris had a drug problem. Lorraine Newman had a drug problem. Beyond the usual drugs,
some violence associated with that as well.
And it was.
Nobody teaches you how to be instantly famous.
Nobody does, and I don't know that anybody could, because I think you just have to deal with it and learn from it, which is why, in a sense, when I've dealt with some people, because I've had a long career talking with celebrities for one reason or another, when you get bad behavior, I just sort of say, well, that's where they are today, and a year from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now, they'll be a different person. In
researching the book, and we could talk about this for hours.
I got time.
Who's been your favorite? Who's been your favorite of the Saturday Night Live? Well, when you look at personality, comedy style.
I have an answer.
Who is it?
I have an answer that I think only the aficionados, perhaps, of the show will remember. But this is a person who had a tremendous influence on the program its first 3 years. It was one of the first people that Lorne Michaels hired. He was an editor for the National Lampoon, and he brought this dark sensibility to Saturday Night Live, and his name is Michael O'Donoghue. Michael O'Donoghue was a behind-the-scenes writer, but he was also on air now and then. Michael O'Donoghue, as a matter of fact, I believe he was the very first face ever seen on Saturday Night Live, because the very first show had what they call the cold opening, where they do a sketch immediately to go into a sketch, and his was the face the camera was on, and he looked in the camera and he said, "Repeat after me." And then they showed John Belushi as a Ukrainian or someone from Eastern Europe trying to learn English, and it ends up with the Wolverines biting your fingers, and John Belushi has a heart attack and falls on the floor, and Michael O'Donoghue follows him. But Michael O'Donoghue also did a sketch where he would say, "What would the Mormon Tabernacle Choir do if they all had needles in their eyes?" And then he would start falling all over the stage. But Michael had an amazingly big impact on this program, and just in his sensibility. And in interviewing him several times, I just loved that experience. I liked Al Franken and Tom Davis a lot too, and I liked a lot of people, but Michael O'Donoghue was really special. Sadly, Michael died almost 10 years ago now, and but he had a tremendous influence on that show. One of his jokes in the early years, it was they did a Weekend Update sketch in which the anchor said, I think it was Chevy, said that, and this was true, there used to be an old TV personality called Mr. Backwards, and he had died. He had actually been mugged on the street in Utah or somewhere. I don't know about Utah, but he had been mugged on the street, so Chevy said that Mr. Backwards has died, old TV personality, and he was mugged on the street, and his last words were "pleh, pleh."
Oh, that's awful and irreverent.
That's Michael O'Donoghue. That's the essence of Michael O'Donoghue.
Well, we're almost out of time, but this show, Saturday Night Live, people have prepared for its burial numerous times. has kept it coming back? Lorne Michaels?
Well, what's kept it back is that Lorne Michaels learned early on with the departure of Chevy Chase after the first year and John Belushi and Dan Aykroyd after the fourth year, that to keep this going, he has to keep fresh faces coming in. And he was very upset about those departures, but he learned. Lorne's very smart, besides being very funny, and he learned. And so those who watch Saturday Night Live know that every few years, all of a sudden, there's new faces, and don't you know it, 2-3 years later, they're your favorites.
Right.
And then it keeps going like that. And
he realized not to make any one person responsible for the franchise.
Well, just to keep it going so that there's always like a turnover. You know there's going to be a turnover because they become famous, and then Hollywood comes calling, and they go do a movie, and they're too busy to do the show.
Or they wind up on the very type of sitcom that they started out not trying to emulate.
That's right.
They sell out.
Well,
so much for capitalism.
At some point, right.
And you know what? Thank goodness they have rotated people in and out, because it's been an avenue for, continuing generations of comics.
Absolutely.
I mean, Eddie Murphy, Mr. Rogers'
Michael
Neighborhood, Michael Myers, Adam Sandler. I mean, it just goes on and on.
Absolutely.
And some of them excelling in spite of the show. They still can come out of this even during the years when people are saying, Saturday Night Live's dead.
Well,
Still
people,
got stars out of that.
You know who's saying that? All us old people. The young people, they're not saying it so much, Yeah. Yeah, it's a generational thing. You talk to your daughters or to your nieces or to your whatever, every 5, 6, 7 years, everybody has their favorites on Saturday Night Live, and the 40-year-olds will have their favorites, the 50-year-olds will have theirs, and the 25-year-olds will have theirs. And it's really true. They are aiming it at probably 15-year-olds to 34-year-olds. And I think there are some things on the current show that are now and then are pretty funny, and they make me laugh. But I know that when I'm sitting there saying, "Oh, what's that?" Somebody else is laughing their head off.
Well, and politically things change, and it's cyclical. We've seen this whole thing about possibly elections lost because of family values. So they're dealing with this all the time, and yet still do that newscast.
Yeah.
Still,
they're still pretty sharp politically, I think.
Yeah.
They get up for the elections. It's not like sometimes it's juvenile, but in the election periods or when there's a hot issue and it's a political issue, they have some good thinkers there in terms of the writers, and they generally can gear up and do something pretty sharp and pretty pointed.
Well, don't you think that comics are usually smart people?
Yes, I do.
I think you need to be smart to be funny.
Miserable, but smart.
Some of them are happy.
Yes, some of them are.
I hope some of them are happy.
Some of them are.
Well, the book's terrific. I could talk to you all day about this kind of thing. Will you come back and talk with us? You've had a very diversified career. You've started as a copy boy, a reporter, now freelance writer, and boy, have you met some interesting people.
I have, and I'll be happy to come back and talk about it.
Oh, that'll be great. And maybe you'll add me to that list of interesting people.
Good.
I hope so. Or maybe funny, or maybe smart. Again, the book is Saturday Night, A Backstage History of Saturday Night Live. Doug Hill and Jeff Weingrad. Thank you so much,
You're welcome.
Jeff. There's nothing like a good conversation, especially when it's with interesting people.